Hello internet friends, my name is Catherine and I'm the human behind Creation Miss Couture, and today we are going to do a fun experiment to see the different ways we can do a fade with mini skeins. So we're going to be using my classic sock mini skeins, 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. And we're going to use the same three colors for both fades so we can have a good comparison. In one case we're going to be dyeing individually the skeins, and in the other we are going to be using the same pan to do the fade in one pan. So without further ado, let's get into this. Today we're going to be doing two different kind of fades. For the one in the back here, we're going to be using the same colors for both sets of fades. So Hyacinth, Olive Brown, and Sage Leaf from Dharma Trading Co. So the first one will be a more traditional one where we're going to go up to a 400 milliliter for our mini skeins, and that way I can use 200 milliliter on one side and 200 on the other side. And for the second one, we're going to be using those mini ones because we're going to be dyeing individually each of the mini skeins. So this is why I'm using the mini ones, because I'm just going to be putting them in the large bucket of water. So what we're going to do first is doing our stock solution for both. I'm going to start with the bigger one, and I'm going to measure 0.25 grams of our dyes for the three of them. So the first thing you need to do is grab your respirator. You do not have to use the exact same one as I do. However, you need something that will make sure that will catch the fine particles, and you're not going to breathe those fine particles because we only have one pair of lungs, so please protect them. And today we're getting the very fine one, the fine scales out. Always make sure that your scales is at 0 first before doing anything. So we're going to be measuring 0.25 grams because I have minis that are 0.25 grams. Of course, the one time I'm showing you with my mini thing, I got a problem. It all gets stuck over here. It happens. That's life. I don't usually have clumps like this. Okay, now we're good. And I'm going to make sure to clean up that because we want to make sure that there's no color left on the scale. Okay. And I'm going to be adding my the more liquid after. And always make sure that your scale is at 0 before doing anything. And same thing, I'm going to be measuring my 0.25 gram, so that way I have the quantity I want for the effect I want. Perfect. See, I'm already learning from my mistakes. But I still want to put water in here just to make sure that I've dissolved everything before adding anything to anything. Okay, perfect. So I always make sure that I am at 0 to ensure that I'm properly measuring everything. And we also have our colors. Perfect. So this is for the first set, and like I said, I'm going to be adding more over here. I just need to finish all of my things first. So now that we're going to do the second set, which will be individually dyed. So I need to grab one of this. So yes. So I'm going to be measuring 0.25 here as well. I really really love this very fine particle scale. It's very great, especially if I'm using very small amount of dye. It helps a lot for precisions. And apparently, oh gosh, there we go. And the same thing, I'm going to be putting liquid in my thing here just to ensure that I don't have any dry powder and I don't contaminate the other colors. So I'm going to do the ones that are like 1% stock solutions first, so that way I can do my middle ones after. Oop, okay, it works. I didn't need to go all the way to the trouble. Could have just done that in the first place. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold. I prefer to use this because I felt like the other thing was moving a little too much. Okay, there we go. Perfect. And same thing, I'm rinsing it off with my water. Okay, so now what I'm going to do with the middle colors is that I'm going to do half and half. So I'll do 0.12 for this. Ideally, if I can get 0.125, that's what I'm going to do. But it might be a little hard. I think that's the best we can do for this color. And now I'm going to grab my olive brown and we're going to go up to a 0.25. And this is why I'm trying to keep them separate as much as possible. So it's going to be a half and half. There we go. So now we are at the half and half mark for this one. So we're going to be repeating this process with olive brown and sage leaf. So that way we have like those colors that are mixed together. There we go. So this is cleaned up. Now we are going to do olive brown and sage leaf together, and we're going to do the same thing. So 0.12, 0.5 as much as possible over here, and we're going to be topping up with the sage leaf over here to go up to a 0.25 grams of powder. Oops, tiny bit too much. There we go. Perfect. So now I can turn this off. I'm going to be adding the liquid here. Okay, and now that all our dry powder is no longer in the dry powder form, we can remove the respirator. I'm just going to be topping up a tiny bit of those so they're all the same height. It doesn't really matter at this point for those ones, simply because they're all gonna go in the bigger jars anyway. little bit more liquid for this one. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly do a tissue test. I know that I repeat it all the time, but the tissue tests are not reliable, but it can give us an idea of what it's going to look like. Because there's some colors that are just not going to show off until we cook the yarn. So this is just to give us an idea of what it could look like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the pan now with those things. So see you in 2 seconds. I'm going to add my minis in here. So they are my classic sock mini skeins. So they are 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. And we're going to do a 5 skein fade. Because I want to. And also, like, when we are using an odd number of colors, it's better to use an odd numbers of minis as well, so it goes like more smooth in there. So that's why. That's the only reason I'm doing this. Using half the color from the jar on this side and the other half on the other side. So I'm going to grab my hyacinth first, and we're going to be using 200 milliliters on this first side. And I make sure that I cover more of the first mini skeins first over here, and that I cover about half of the second one. Then we're going to go with 200 milliliter of the olive that we just made. And same thing, but this time we're making sure that we catch the second from the first one and that one as well, with the middle one being the most covered. And this is also why we're going with a higher immersion level that we usually do, so that way we have a better control of where the dye will go, because the water creates a natural resistance to the dye. There we go. And I did turn on the heat already, so that we can start all the process. So we're going to let this work, and we're going to be adding our mini skeins into our other stuff. So I know I only have the 4 here, but it's because I don't have enough burners to do the 5 of them, and I didn't want to use my mason jars for those because it would take a little longer, and I want those minis to be starting to work for me now. Okay, so when it comes to the citric acid that we've just added, about a quarter of a teaspoon will be more than enough for what we're working with, simply because they're mini skeins, and the rule of thumb is always 1 tablespoon per pound, so 454 grams of fiber or yarn. We don't need a whole lot. And yes, I already started to add heat over here. Okay, so we're going to do our mini skeins now that are fully submerged. I really like this hyacinth color. It's really nice. And we make sure that we are opening up the mini skeins by moving around the yarn as much as possible and removing too much of the resistance from the tie wrap. And we're doing it this way to show how different the colors will look from the fade that we will be creating with the other way of doing a fade. So it's going to be a very interesting things to compare, because there's many way of doing fades and gradients, so it just depends on like what you want to do and how you like it to be done. There we go. And another reason why I'm using those containers instead of my mason jars, because the water will heat up faster. So it will heat up faster. So it will heat up faster, so it's going to be easier for me to cook it. And here we go. Okay, so here you can see that my hyacinth is already fully absorbed and struck the yarn, but the sage leaf is still over there. But it's okay, we can just work with what we have. And we're just going to do one skein at a time, so that way the color won't move too much. Because we've already waited like 10 minutes for this to strike a little bit. So we're just going to let this work. Okay, there we go. And you can see why I wanted to keep half of the color, so that way we can make sure that we have a better coverage of the mini skeins. There we go. Okay, so that's better. And now we're going to do here. So this is going to be a very sweet fade. Very, very cute. There we go. And voila. Okay, so now that all the dye is here, what we're going to do is we're going to wait for 30 minutes for this to cook fully, and then we're going to turn off the heat after that. So see you in a little bit. Okay, so I think we can turn off the heat for this, and then we're going to let it cool off completely before washing off the excess dye. And yeah, okay, let's see. So we still need a little bit of cook time here. So once it's completely cleared off, we're going to turn off the heat, and we're going to let it cool off completely before washing off the excess dye. So I will see you when it's ready for that. So see you in a bit. Okay, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we didn't had any bleeding, not bleeding, we didn't had any color left in the dye pan, which is always fantastic. We like and love a clean bath after we've vetted everything. That's going to be a very cute mermaid-like fade, I feel. Okay, so this is looking good so far, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let them sit in the bath for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, so that way we can just like make sure that we've exhausted all the colors. So we'll be back in 15 to see where we're at. Okay, what does it look like now? Okay. I only have 3 of those. Where are the 2? 1. Okay, there we go. Okay. What does the bath look like? Pretty clean. I don't think we have any. Nice, we don't have anything. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly put this in my spin dryer, and now I'm going to grab the skeins that we've dyed separately. So instead of doing the fade in the same pan, we did the fade in individual pots. So that way we were going to see the difference it makes. Okay. And you can already tell that like the main difference so far is that the color are more solid and that they appear to be darker than the one that were in the pan, which makes sense in my opinion, because we diluted the color a little bit more in there because I wanted to make sure that we were spreading the color so it will be a little bit more solid, a little bit more tonal, or maybe more like it won't be like it will be more, how can I say that, the color will be more vibrant because it was not worked on 2 skeins, because we wanted to make sure that there was colors on the one skein but on the second skein next to it. So this is also why we wanted to make sure that we had enough liquid. So there's also that. So I'm going to let this sit for like 10 minutes and we're going to come back to see if we have any bleeding. Okay. And the water looks pretty good to me. Yeah, so we're going to be able to put this in the spin dryer, and after that we're going to let it dry overnight, and I will see you tomorrow for the final result. Bye! And here's the final result. And here's the final result of our fade 2-way. And you can see the difference between the one pen versus dyeing individually each skeins is that here we have a bit like a more slow transformation the color fades into each other better, where this one is a more cut and dry color difference. Here you can see the difference between those two here for mini skeins is that the colors will fade into each other, where this one there's a drastic contrast. So here you would definitely need to switch up and do like an actual fade, like a classic fade when you have different colors into each other, where on this side you wouldn't necessarily need to switch up your skeins like a few rows before so that they would have a better fade. I think this one, if you were to knit or crochet it, they would, like, honestly I would probably not even like swap the colors. I would just carry on with and use like a magic knot between each skeins to just use it as is, where this one I would start the fade like a few rows before the end of the skein into the next one. So both ways of doing it are 100% valid, and it would look very nice for all of it. I just feel like the transition, that was the word I was looking for, transition between each of those skeins would be smoother. Oh, and now she moved the camera, little rascal. So the transition is much smoother between this way of doing it versus this way. However, if you're going to be doing a lot of skeins, this allow you to do more at once, where this one you have to do one pad at a time. So it really depends on what your end goal is to do. I personally really enjoy doing one pan per fade. I feel like the transition is much smoother, but this is 100% a personal choice. So at the end of the day, it really depends on what's your goal and what you want to accomplish with your dye and your style and all of it, because those colors are much bolder and those ones are a little bit more on subtle. So if I were to pump up the color for this, so we have a higher percentage of depth of shades versus to be closer to this side, I would probably like double the dye. So it really depends on what you want to do, right? So I hope you liked the video, and if you did, please consider sharing, liking, and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one very soon. Bye!